Thank you for watching our latest video. Let's jump right in. Putin's dream of rebuilding the Soviet Union has always rested on the lie that Ukraine isn't a sovereign nation, that Ukrainians aren't individuals, and that the inhabitants of Kiev, Kharkiv and Lviv are desperate for Moscow's rule. But from a historical perspective, that is complete nonsense. Ukraine is a nation with more than 1,000 years of history, and Kiev was already a major metropolis when Moscow was not even a village. But the Russian tyrant has told his lie so many times that he apparently believes it himself. When planning his invasion of Ukraine, Putin could count on a few facts. He knew that his military dwarfed Ukraine's. He knew that NATO would not send troops to support. He knew that European dependence on Russian oil and gas would make countries like Germany hesitate about imposing stiff sanctions. Based on these known facts, his plan was to hit Ukraine hard and fast, remove its government and establish a puppet regime, and then ride out the Western sanctions until they got bored. But of course, as all occupying forces have found throughout history, it's easy to conquer someone, but almost impossible to hold that territory indefinitely, and this metric would have been the only way to measure a Russian victory. Would the Ukrainians accept them as saviors and allow them to stay? Now, as already mentioned, Putin had already drunk the Kool-Aid and thought this would be a given. I mean, the invasion of Crimea in 2014 had been met with almost zero resistance. Why would their efforts in 2022 be any different? Nations are created on the backs of stories. Every day adds more stories that Ukrainians will tell not only in the days ahead, but in the generations to come. For example, the president who didn't leave the capital, telling the US that he needs ammunition, not a ride, the soldiers from Snake Island who told a Russian warship to go fuck yourself, the civilians who tried to stop Russian tanks by sitting in their path. This is the stuff nations are built from. In the long run, these stories count for more than tanks, not that Putin's army seems capable of holding onto those. Putin should know this fact as well as anyone. As a child, he grew up on a diet of stories about German atrocities and Russian bravery in the siege of Leningrad. He is now producing similar stories but casting himself in the role of Hitler. The comparison is a stark one. Like Hitler, Putin has started to take the war personally. It has become about himself and not his people. His anger has started to control his actions. A super example of this was his recent reaction to the attack on the Kerch Bridge. He took this as a terrorist attack for some unknown reason, and then he reacted emotionally instead of strategically. There is a historical precedent to this very important moment, and it's all negative. One particular example that I would like to focus on occurred on the 24th of August 1940, when a group of Luftwaffe bombers aiming for a military target on the outskirts of London drifted off course and instead dropped their bombs on the centre of London, destroying several homes and killing several civilians. In response to the perceived act of terror, the first RAF raid on Berlin took place the next night, when 95 aircraft were dispatched to bomb Tempelhof Airport near the center of Berlin and Siemensstadt, of which 81 dropped their bombs in and around Berlin, and while the damage was slight, the psychological effect on Adolf Hitler was greater. These attacks prompted him to order the shift of the Luftwaffe's target from British airfields and air defences to British cities, at a time during the Battle of Britain when the British air defences were becoming exhausted, overstretched and frankly on the verge of collapse. It was this shift and subsequent battle of attrition that exhausted the Luftwaffe and effectively ensured the continued participation of England in World War II, and it all resulted from an emotional response to a particular strategic situation. What it did was to steal the British resolve, and they adopted their famous Blitz mentality, which improved overall morale and focused the country's combined determination to beat the shared enemy, Adolf Hitler. This decision arguably cost him the war. Putin's response to the strategic attack on the Kerch Bridge has been to bomb civilian targets all around the Ukraine with zero military or strategic value. Apart from being a massive waste in time and money, he is making the same mistake that Hitler did and only focusing the will of Ukraine against him. What's more, it is a guarantee that they will never accept his occupation, thus ensuring Russia's eventual defeat. Let's look at his various attacks based purely on financial terms. Russia launched 84 cruise missiles and 24 drones all across Ukraine on October 10, with an average total value of $400 to $700 million, according to Forbes. While the exact type of each missile launched is currently unknown, it was reported that Kh-101, Kh-555 caliber, Iskander, S-300, and Tornado S missiles were used in the attacks. Forbes calculated the cost based on the assumption that most of the missiles Russia launched were the expensive and highly accurate Kh-101, S-300, and Tornado S missiles, while the remaining were aimed at overloading Ukraine's air defenses. Now obviously this is just an estimation, but it is still eye-watering when you consider that it all came from their leaders' dented pride and nothing more. There was no strategic value in any of these attacks. Before you ask, the S-300 can be used for ground attack purposes and is not solely an anti-air-based system. Other similar systems have been used by the Russians to attack ground targets during this war. Just to put that value into perspective, if we take the lower end of the cost at $400 million, he could have purchased the following that would have given his men a significant morale boost and have had a far greater strategic benefit to the Russian war effort. Approximately 100 T-14 Armata tanks or 100 T-90 SM main battle tanks that are valued at an estimated $4 million each. Almost an entire squadron of Su-34 fighter bomber strike aircraft. 400,000 brand AK-12 assault rifles, making the issuing of Mosin Nagants and old AK-47s to conscripts unnecessary. Roughly 5 million IFAK medical kits, negating the need for the issuing of tampons and sanitary pads as wound coverings. The list of possible items goes on and on. What this action has also proven without question is that Vladimir Putin, like Hitler, simply doesn't care about his men and would rather appear to be a hard man than someone who actually wants to win. If Putin wasn't running the war based on emotion and did everything based on sound military judgment, surely he would be directing his cruise missiles against the attacking Ukrainian forces in an effort to stop their advance? Well, that simply may not be possible. You see, the Russian missile options appear to be highly unreliable and they are running out of inventory fast. A Pentagon report from the 25th of March confirmed that various Russian missiles were experiencing failure rates of 20 to 60%. Failure was defined as the inability to launch or hit the target, with cruise missiles, particularly air-launched cruise missiles, having the lowest kill rates. Reportedly, some missiles did not explode even when they hit their targets. Thus, in addition to the reliability and quality control problems with the missiles, they apparently also have a fusing problem. In 2017, a noted Russian military journalist pointed out in state media that the Kalibr naval cruise missile had an accuracy of 30 meters and the Kh-101 air-launched cruise missile had an accuracy of 5 to 50 meters. 50 meters is not even close to near-precision accuracy. In January 2022, U.S. Army Chief of Staff General James McConville said that Russian hypersonic missiles were not a game-changer because, "I have not seen them actually hit a target with that system." U.S. Northern Command, Commander General Glenn Van Herk has said Russia has challenges regarding accuracy of its hypersonic missiles. What this all means is that whilst you only need one missile to hit near a residential area for panic to ensue, getting that same standoff weapon to actually hit a fast-moving tactical group was highly unlikely, and that a 50-meter accuracy zone would be the difference between significant to light injuries or damage. More importantly, he doesn't actually have enough of these weapons left, and those he does have are old and designed in a dual-purpose role to hold nuclear warheads, something where accuracy isn't very important. In conclusion, Putin's attempts to bombard the civilian population is a mistake that has been proven not to work throughout history. He is falling into this trap because frankly he has no other option. His army cannot stop Ukraine, his standoff weaponry is not effective, and more importantly he needs to appear tough on his enemy so that those closest to him do not turn on him. But it's all temporary and the writing is on the wall. If you enjoyed this, please drop a like and subscribe.